Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on enhancing your career during Pro Bono Week. This event is brought to you during UK Pro Bono Week in conjunction with the PILS project, Law Society of Northern Ireland and the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission, and we are delighted to provide this free online event to legal professionals, recently qualified lawyers and current and prospective law students. We're delighted to welcome our panel today, Chairperson Sinead Mulhern, Jenny Cunningham of the Young Bar, Nicholas Lennon of the Northern Ireland Bar Pro Bono Unit, Dr. Esther McGuinness, Founder and Co-Director of the University of Ulster Law Clinic, and Freddie Riley, Solicitor at Elliott Duffy Garrett, who is also our Northern Ireland Young Solicitor Representative. As you would appreciate, this is a live webinar event, therefore if there are any technological problems or otherwise, please do bear with us. We're due to have about 50 attendees in the virtual audience today, so you are all very welcome. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode, and therefore if you do wish to ask a question, please do so in the chat box or question box function on your screens. And alternatively, if you wish to enable your mic to ask a question through audio, please raise your hand or send a message in the chat box and I will unmute your mic during the designated question and answer session at the end. I would ask that you all please familiarise yourself with this chat box function now so questions can be populated in advance of the question and answer session at the end. And it is hoped that this will be an interactive lecture, so please do participate in the anonymous polls and please note that this webinar is being recorded. So this afternoon's lecture will discuss the potential benefits of pro bono work for legal professionals, and this event will be chaired by Sinead Mulhern. And a little bit about our chairperson today. Sinead has worked as a solicitor with the former Equal Opportunities Commission for Northern Ireland and the Children's Law Centre. And Sinead's keen interest in the promotion of pro bono work stems from her time as a solicitor and project manager with the PILS project. In 2011, Sinead was appointed to set up the Law Centre NI's Legal Support Project, which was the Law Centre's first dedicated pro bono project, and Sinead is currently Head of Clinical Legal Education at the Law Centre. In February 2019, Sinead was appointed Chair of the newly established Litigant in-Person Reference Group. So, to tell us a little bit more just about the context of today's event, I'm going to hand over to Emma Cassidy from the PILS project.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. My name is Emma Cassidy and I am the project officer with the PILS project. I'm joined on the call this morning by my colleagues, Sarah Corrigan and Colin Fegan. And for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with the PILS project or our work, we were set up in 2009 to provide financial and legal support to public interest cases in Northern Ireland that focus on human rights and equality issues specifically. So we are very, very pleased to be co-hosting today's event alongside the Law Society as part of UK Pro Bono Week. UK Pro Bono Week is a week-long celebration of all things pro bono related, and it's now in its 19th year. So we're very pleased to be bringing you this discussion in 2020. As Jennifer mentioned, the topic of today's webinar has taken on a new significance with the COVID-19 related social distancing restrictions. So we're really pleased to have the panel of speakers here today who can hopefully not only talk about the potential benefits that pro bono could provide to legal professionals in 2020, but also look at the role that it could potentially play when we're training the lawyers of the future through initiatives such as clinical legal education programs. So to everybody in our audience, wherever you're joining from Northern Ireland or further afield, we can't see you, but thank you very much for joining and we want to hear from you during the event. So as Jennifer has mentioned, please feel free to use the chat box. As it's part of UK Pro Bono Week, we'd encourage you to use the hashtags, #WeDoProBono or #Pro Bono Week to share your thoughts either on this event or on anything in the week that's going on in general. And lastly, one other way that we would like to hear a little bit more from our audience today is through the use of the anonymous polls that Jennifer mentioned. Now she's going to hopefully help me with the technical side of things and get the very first one of those up on screens for you. But really it's just a way for Sinead as our chair and for our panelists to get a sense of of how much experience everybody has in terms of pro bono. So as I say, this is really just a very quick straw poll to see how much experience everybody has. So I don't know, Jennifer, if we can get that up on screen.
Yes, that's just been launched.
Oh, brilliant.
I think I'm just waiting for a few more attendees to vote.
Oh, brilliant. Well, just because I'm sharing my screen for those slides, so it's a surprise to me that the poll's going on. So surprise me with your answers, everybody.
So if I close the poll and I'm going to share the results. So we have 15% of our audience have said yes, it's something I do regularly. 23% have said yes, I volunteer occasionally, and 62% have said no, I've not done pro bono work before.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody, for giving our panelists that sense. To anybody who has said, no, I haven't got involved before, a little spoiler alert, my colleague Sarah Corrigan might be sharing some information at the end of this webinar. If anybody is interested in learning more, a way that you can get involved, but that's at the very end of today's proceedings, and I'm conscious that nobody listening in has signed up to hear me this morning. You're all here to hear our panelists. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our chair for the day, Sinead Mulhern. Sinead, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks very much, Emma, and thanks very much to the PILS project and to the Law Society for inviting me to chair today's event. Everybody hasn't signed up to hear me either, Emma, so I make only one comment. And interested when I looked at the title of today's seminar. It's only really in the last 10 years of my career, which has been a long career. You can see it in my face, it's etched long and hard in my face, that I've become really aware of the power of pro bono for change in terms of providing access to justice for people who can't afford lawyers. Obviously not in terms of replacing or substituting a properly funded legal aid scheme or system of publicly funded legal aid, but rather more for filling the gaps. So actually today it's interesting that we're going to be looking at another aspect of potential enhancement around personal development, building skills and building confidence, especially when I see that maybe 62% of our audience haven't actually engaged in pro bono work. So I am looking forward to hearing from the panel. And I'm going to move forward and hand over to introduce you to the first of our panel speakers today. They're going to Jenny Cunningham, who's going to speak for about 5 minutes. And just to tell you a little bit about Jenny, Jenny was called to the Northern Ireland Bar in 2017. Her practice largely focuses on public and private family law cases in all courts and associated matrimonial and ancillary relief cases and judicial review. Jenny's a very active member of the Young Bar Association and has been since she was called to the bar, and has held a number of offices in the Young Bar Association. Most recently, she was elected co-chair of the Young Bar Association. So Jenny, I'm handing over to you for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much to Sinead for the very kind introduction. As Sinead says, I was called to the bar in 2017, and I had spent the majority of my pupillage watching my master in a lot of public law cases, sort of high-level judicial reviews, declaratory cases, and public family cases. When I started my practice then, I cut my teeth, as many of us do, in the domestic proceedings court, the MAGs, the FPC, which invaluable experience though it was a far cry from the public law issues that I had seen my master deal with. I then had the privilege to work with PILS' very own Sarah Corrigan, who's currently a project manager and solicitor with PILS, but at that time was the in-house solicitor at Housing Rights. And Sarah very kindly instructed me in defending ejectment civil bill proceedings, essentially when we were trying to stop vulnerable members of society being ejected from their accommodation. And then when Sarah took up her role in PILS, and I'm very grateful that she did, she kept in touch with me, quite rightly realising that pro bono work was something that I would be interested in. And thereafter, I had the pleasure of joining the PILS Pro Bono Register of Counsel and of attending the 10th anniversary event last year in October. That was in the Merchant, and we all had the pleasure of hearing Michael Mansfield QC speak about his long career in public interest work and the importance of PILS and pro bono work in general. I was asked as well today to talk a little bit about if and how COVID-19 has affected my approach to work. I suppose it's a bit bleak to say, but to be quite frank, there was no work for a couple of months. I think a lot of us will be aware, especially the junior end of practice, whether that be counsel or solicitor. It was an incredibly and remains an incredibly difficult time for practitioners. And something that I was keenly aware of was the fact that my clients' problems were persisting or getting worse during the COVID months, and they didn't have recourse to access to justice in those months to try and assist with that. And I ended up sort of spending many hours inadvertently or unavoidably on a pro bono basis, although not officially pro bono work, giving advice, negotiating, constantly going back and forth to try and assist with that. As Sinead outlined in her introduction, I was also this year elected as joint chair of the Young Bar Association. And alongside my colleagues on the Young Bar Association committee, we have been keenly focused on coming up with ways to both protect and promote the interests and the profile of young counsel and more junior counsel during this time of great pressure on all practitioners. And I firmly believe that pro bono work is an excellent opportunity for this. Further, I would say that COVID definitely made me more mindful of the importance of our role as practitioners and how directly and immediately our accessibility to lay clients and members of the public can have an immediate impact on their day-to-day lives, whether that be in the context of public or private family cases, domestic cases, associated judicial reviews, and the effect of all of those being stalled. It's also reminded me to be open-minded about areas of work, the transferability and the access, you can carry skills over from different areas of work. There's a tendency, I think, among junior practitioners, whether it be solicitor or counsel, to sort of pigeonhole yourself quite early on. And I think COVID definitely reminded me of the importance of keeping an open mind when it comes to different opportunities for work. And most importantly, I think for my 5-minute slot today, I want to talk a little bit about how I feel that pro bono work then might help practitioners to develop their career prospects. Again, in my role as co-chair of the Young Bar this year, I'm keenly aware that the interest of junior practitioners will be, I should fair to say, we're all here to try and make a living at the same time as practicing law, will be on how to raise their profile, increase their skills, especially in what is a legal marketplace under a lot of pressure on foot of the public health crisis. And I would sum it up by saying that pro bono work provides 3 key benefits to junior practitioners. Number one, I would say it's refreshing and satisfying work. I don't know if you gleaned that from my description of my previous work with Sarah, but I'd say that all of us being led down the route of studying or practicing law probably have some little seed of interest in holding public authority to account, whether it was, in my case, parents who adored the film Erin Brockovich and had one too many John Grisham novels lying about the house. There's probably an inkling of that in all of us, which inevitably can take a bit of a back seat in the day-to-day realities of running a practice and being a legal practitioner. But it's important to remember that, I think, where you get your inspiration to practice law. Moving away maybe from a bit of a warm and fuzzy reason for doing the work into a more tangible practical benefit, which I'm sure more junior practitioners would be keen to hear about. Second key benefit, networking, plain and simple. If it wasn't for Sarah, I wouldn't have had the opportunity, most likely yet at this stage in my career, to have appeared in certain courts, which it's fair to say would usually have been dominated by much more senior and predominantly male practitioners and colleagues, some of whom who have passed me work since. Exposure to other practitioners, whether it be solicitor, counsel, experts, as well as the courts, the tip staff, and the members of the bench who preside over those courts. Often at a higher level than you would have expected at certain stages in your career. It's invaluable. And that leads me to my third and final point, which I believe is the key benefit for doing pro bono work, and that's experience. I think most of us and most of our attendees and most of our panel will be aware that there's no substitute for experience. And pro bono work can often provide you with an opportunity to grapple with areas of law, and specifically public law, which you might not have had the opportunity to encounter and deal with at certain stages of your career. And the experience and transferable skills associated with that are invaluable. So to sum up, I would say refreshing and satisfying work. Pro bono allows you to network with people you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to network with. And thirdly, and most importantly, it provides you with invaluable experience.
Thanks very much, Jenny, and thank you very much for keeping to time. You have set the bar high for the other panelists. On your 3 key points, I think they're themes that we'll definitely pick up in our discussion more fully at the end and in our question and answer session. I'm just going to move on now to our next panelist, and that is Nicholas Lennon. Have I got the order right? Yes, I think I have. It's Nicholas Lennon. If I could just tell you something about Nicholas. Nicholas is also a barrister. He's been in practice since 2018. His practice is mainly civil and family law. This year, he has become involved with the Northern Ireland Bar's Pro Bono unit, which I think has been around for some considerable time, actually. And he also sits as a committee member on the Young Bar Association. And Nicholas is very keen that in his role on both of those committees, if you like, he will work towards creating opportunities, pro bono opportunities for young barristers. So thank you, Nicholas, and over to you. Okay.
Sinead, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, I can, yep.
That's great, thank you, and good morning to everybody. If I can start by saying, I think the pandemic has affected the wider public, and those that do provide pro bono work will now be undoubtedly more sought after, and those that do provide a valuable service to society. The pandemic, however, has adversely affected legal practitioners, and my thought process over the pandemic had been, how do we get ourselves out of this situation, out of this quagmire, and how do we be proactive in enhancing our own careers? How can we get more cases? How do we diversify our legal experience and increase our professional network? And I'm very much echoing what one of our other co-panelists there, Ms. Cunningham, has said. I believe being a pro bono lawyer provides for this. I became involved in pro bono work at the beginning of this legal year, and I did so as a direct result of COVID-19. I, like a lot of barristers, spent the period of about 4 or 5 months twiddling my thumbs and waiting for the courts to reopen. And as lockdown wore on and Netflix's catalogue of shows became exhausted, I became increasingly restless with my inability to create my own work, and began thinking of ways to kickstart my and others' careers. So I then began working with and within the Young Bar Association and the Bar of NI's Pro Bono unit to try and create those pro bono opportunities for junior barristers. Why have we been doing so? Again, to echo the words of Miss Cunningham, I think we have collectively as lawyers are aware of that the fruits of our labours are not often immediately rewarded. We must also realise the value of opportunities that don't give immediate financial gain. I looked at pro bono work as getting ways of getting people back into court, even if it is virtually. As a result of this, allowing you to speak to other practitioners and to be instructed in cases that might be outside of your area or your immediate area of expertise or comfort zone. And as Ms. Cunningham says, maybe to be in a slightly more high profile case than you would previously have been expecting. It'll also allow you to add another string to your bow or professional CV. So I think where young counsel and young solicitors are involved, where you have sufficient capacity and expertise, and the opportunity is provided to be instructed in a case that can tick all of those boxes, I think we should jump at the chance. For example, I think, where the commute may have been cut out of a lot of our normal working days now, why not use that time to work on a pro bono case? Also, at a time, I think as well, when one of these warm and fuzzy reasons where I suppose our own mental health can be taking a beating, what better way than to remedy that than to dedicate some of your time into helping someone else, and in the process helping yourself and your career. I also believe that pro bono opportunities are not just beneficial to junior lawyers. I attended a pro bono talk on Monday in which Lord Stevens was speaking about how pro bono cases can often find their way to the Supreme Court. So where senior lawyers are stepping in to avail of pro bono opportunities, I think we must ask ourselves, what are the benefits that they are seeing that we are not? I appreciate a lot of that can seem quite self-serving, and I propose using pro bono work to one's own advantage, and I encourage you to do so. But I also must say that pro bono lawyers, the ones that I have met, are far from self-serving, and they're often altruistic people. They're people that are willing to give up their spare time to help others. And all I can also say, and what I'll end on, is that when speaking to pro bono practitioners, I think you will quickly come across that the help you provide in pro bono cases, those cases will be the ones that you remember.
Yeah, right. Thanks very much, Nicholas, for that. I'm just struck a theme across Nicholas and Jenny was in terms of tapping into new areas of law, finding out about new areas, find new areas in which to become expert. And actually, I was very heartened, without taking too much time here, just we had a very good example of that in the Law Centre. Somebody who worked with us pro bono many years ago was a young barrister, had two very successful, was counselling two very successful cases in the court, in the High Court and the Court of Appeal this summer, and has in the area of social security become quite the expert. So had all good reasons for engaging in pro bono work, but also as a great beneficiary, I think, of what was learned in the process. So now, not taking any more time, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Esther McGuinness, who I think for many of you might not need much of an introduction actually, but I'll just tell you a bit about Esther. Esther is a senior lecturer in law at Ulster University, and she was a former head of the law school. She's a founder and most recently a co-director of Ulster University's award-winning law clinic that I think has been around for maybe 8 years or more, Esther. I'm not sure whether I'm right about that, but it now has a long and established track record. And currently in that role, Esther supervises LLM access to justice students in providing pro bono assistance to claimants, to people, individuals who don't otherwise have access to legal representation, and particularly in the areas of social security and employment law. And so, Esther, over to you to tell us with a slightly different perspective about your experience with the clinic. Thanks.
Thanks, Sinead. It's very humbling to have someone like Sinead Mulhern chair a panel like this, because Sinead has done so much work in this area herself. So my thanks to Sinead and to PILS for inviting me along to participate in this panel today. Why do pro bono work? Well, let's change that up a wee bit and ask, what does pro bono mean? And of course, pro bono, for those of you who are not sure, translates from Latin into for the public good. And I think we've seen a lot of public good since the very first lockdown, since COVID first reached our shores around February or March of this year. Whether that was people operating food banks or responding to calls for help or volunteers, pro bono exists. It's how we package it and it's how we talk about it that's really important. So why do pro bono and what's my experience? Well, my experience is probably a bit different. I first had a career in nursing before I came to law. And through that career in nursing, I was a union rep. And I spent a lot of time representing people at disciplinaries and hearings. And, you know, I've remembered far too many tribunal judges who have since retired. And when I moved from where I lived to Belfast, I thought I would do something different and develop my knowledge and my love at that stage of employment law. And so I did a law degree, and here I am. The law clinic was the brainchild of really two of my colleagues, Professor Gráinne McKeever and Kieran White. And I was co-opted onto that committee in 2013 when the law clinic opened. And since 2013, our students, who would only number about 80 to date, 80 or 90, have done 9,600 pro bono hours and contributed in over £1 million of pro bono advice. And that's really, really significant, hugely significant. As a lawyer, I think we have a moral duty to help those who need help, and to help those specifically who need help in terms of accessing justice. Since COVID, we have seen a dramatic increase in the number of inquiries to the law clinic and emails and referrals in from other agencies. To say that we are overwhelmed is probably an understatement, but that is a measure of the depth of need that exists in the community, not very far away from us. And it's been a difficult time because when people call us, our telephone calls usually go from taking a history of what's happening in their lives right now in terms of employment, and then continuing on with advice on Social Security and what Social Security benefits they can apply for. So these telephone conversations are usually an hour long and sometimes can take a bit of research because, you know, in my lifetime, and I'm sure in everybody else's lifetime that's on this panel today, I've never experienced anything like this. So what we're trying to do is apply COVID regulations, and I'm talking specifically in terms of the coronavirus job retention scheme and the job support scheme, which wasn't then needed at the 11th hour. But what we've been trying to do is take those weekly updates and graft them on to an existing legal framework. And so for our students, it has been an enormous learning curve because they have had to spend a lot of time researching particular areas of law that maybe they weren't familiar with. You know, not many of them would have been familiar with the term furlough before now. And now I think they're all mini experts on it. So there's a huge demand for our services since COVID, and there's a huge demand on all the organisations that provide pro bono assistance. I would say that there are 229 law clinics in operation in the UK and Northern Ireland. The law clinic at Ulster is the only law clinic amongst all of those that provides advice and assistance up to and including tribunal representation level. And in that takes a huge amount of work, and it also takes a huge amount of courage from our students. And you'll hear from one of our graduates after me, but he can articulate his feelings on this better than I can. But the reality is that the law clinic is dealing with real people, real problems in real time. So in terms of the skills that students on the programme learn, and I often say to them at the start, you don't know what you don't know, but by the end of this master's, you'll wonder how you get through it and you'll be amazed at what you do know. I think pro bono work and working in the law clinic in particular provides our students with an incredible insight into the profession. And Jenny talked earlier about networking opportunities and the satisfying work, and working in the law clinic and pro bono work is absolutely all of those things. It exposes you to other practitioners, but more importantly, from a student point of view or from a new practitioner point of view, what it also does is it helps develop your skills. Aside from the networking and the satisfaction that you get, it helps develop your skills in terms of drafting, in terms of note-taking and researching, and in terms of listening. Many of the clients that come to us through the law clinic are extremely vulnerable clients. And in that, working in the clinic, I think allows the students to develop their awareness and their own emotional intelligence and resilience in terms of how they deal with clients who have vulnerabilities. How do you deal with a client who is deaf, for instance? How do you deal with a client who comes to see you and announces when they get there that they have bipolar disorder, or a client who is extremely anxious? So how do you deal with that when you've asked the questions in advance, but they don't tell you until they get there? So working in a law clinic and pro bono work provides not only a safe learning environment, but really does build emotional intelligence and resilience in students. And I think what it teaches you, importantly, because we are dealing with real people in real time, is more ethical awareness and the vulnerabilities of the people that you're dealing with. Crucially, I think it also teaches you professional responsibility and all that's associated with that in terms of time management and knowing that you are dealing with real people in real time with real problems. But it really does push students out of their comfort zone. And I think in doing that, they gain confidence. It's certainly the clinic is a safe learning environment for students, although Freddie, who's going to follow after me, may disagree with those views of mine and those sentiments. But I think the value of pro bono work is immense. I don't think we talk about it enough. Really, we hear a lot, or we used to hear a lot, of corporate social responsibility, which is a form of pro bono work. But as I mentioned earlier, in terms of COVID and the types of pro bono work that can be done, there can be enormous good done from engaging in legal pro bono work. And in fact, I think it was Nicholas earlier, Sinead as well, mentioned cases proceeding to the Supreme Court. And in one of the very early stages of the clinic, our students were involved in assisting with research in what turned out to be the Sinead and Glocklin case, which proceeded to the Supreme Court. And there have been other cases that they have been involved in which have progressed to the Chief Commissioner of the Social Security Commission. So the value of the work and the experience that you get and the satisfaction that you get in engaging in pro bono work is immense.
Thanks very much, Esther. If I could just add there, I had the privilege of working alongside some of those Ulster University students in the law centre, and yes, it had working pro bono had huge impact on the building of their skills, but I can tell you even more so from the client feedback, it had huge and positive impact on the lives of our clients. So I think in no way, can you underestimate what a positive thing this is all around. And so we move, you have been trailed, Freddie, by Esther McGuinness, and so we move to Freddie, who is Frederick Riley, known to me as Freddie, who is the last of our panelists. Freddie is a recently qualified solicitor with Elliott Duffy Garrett, a firm based in Belfast. He's been involved in pro bono work since 2016 through his masters at Ulster University. I've had the privilege of working with Freddie too. He has provided pro bono representation in Social Security and Employment Tribunals, and today he has another hat as well. He's here representing the Northern Ireland Young Solicitors Association. So over to you, Freddie, for your 5 minutes. Thanks very much.
Many thanks, Sinead. Much appreciated. And good afternoon, everyone. So just firstly, in terms of how I got into pro bono work, I'd come out of university with my undergraduate law degree and was working as a legal professional in a commercial firm in Belfast. And that was grand. There's many opportunities like that out there, but I always eventually saw myself becoming a solicitor, and that kind of non-client facing role wasn't really providing me with the requisite skills. I wanted client contact and to manage my own caseload, and I thought pro bono work would be a very good way to get into that. So I decided to do a master's in access to justice at the University of Ulster, and you've heard all about that from Dr. McGuinness, but just to run over it again, The law clinic was run by students. We were representing individuals in social security and employment law cases, and these were people that couldn't afford to pay for a solicitor. And that leads on to why this work is extremely important, and that's been echoed by the rest of the panel, but just to re-emphasize it, by doing pro bono work, you're essentially helping out someone that really needs it. If you aren't there to assist them, chances are they'll give up and not pursue their legal issue any further, and that will be the end of the matter. And obviously, if that happens, access to justice really suffers. Also, I think it's important to note that there's plenty of people out there that have a distrust of the legal system and of lawyers in general, rightly or wrongly. And it's important that these people are engaged with and brought on board. Esther touched on it, but there's a lot of people with complex needs that essentially fall through the cracks of different institutions. So by doing pro bono work, you'll be this person's key contact in bringing them back into the legal system and bringing them back on board. So in summary, you're doing some really crucial work by doing pro bono, and without your involvement, it probably wouldn't get done, because there's so many people out there that need your assistance. Then in terms of potential career benefits, there's so many. As I've said, there's the skills that you'll need if you eventually want to become a lawyer. There's the obvious ones like drafting documents, taking client consultations, negotiating with the other side in a case. But you'll also pick up more nuanced skills as well. And I think one important one is the ability to actually truly unravel a client's core legal issue. For example, in the Ulster Law Clinic, there was so many times where an individual would phone up or they would come into us and they would present with a particular issue. Say they said they were unfairly dismissed or they were owed money from their employer. But it was only by talking to the individual and actually engaging with them that you begin to tease out other legal issues. So very often there would also say be elements of a sex discrimination claim or a disability discrimination claim. But it's only when you're actually engaging with the person that you actually are able to tease out additional legal issues and you can formulate your legal approach in a much better way. So with that, your communication skills definitely improve. You become better at speaking to people in a manner that they actually understand. I mean, there's no point giving verbose legal arguments if the individual on the other side of you doesn't understand what you're talking about. I think we as practitioners aren't doing our jobs properly if the individual doesn't have a good grasp of what their case is. And that goes right down to the logistics of, you know, where a hearing is being held, what forms need to be submitted to court. There's a clear risk that without your involvement, the individual on the other side just won't have a good understanding of the process. And as I said earlier, access to justice definitely suffers if that happens. And I would just like to emphasize that no matter what your practice area, no matter what practice area you're in at the minute or what practice area you kind of foresee yourself moving into, pro bono work is of key importance. Even say if you see yourself in the future going into, say, commercial litigation, litigants in person at the minute are a massive part of the court system, and no doubt with COVID, they're going to be a massive part in the future. So you're going to have to be able to communicate with these people and understand their issues. And that is true even if you're on the other side of a case with them. Just then, finally, in terms of COVID-19 and how it may affect pro bono work, I think all parties are going to need to be more understanding of the issues around technology. There's going to be problems in effectively consulting with individuals and communicating with them. And I think there should be a focus on feedback with the actual service users to understand what's working best and to be adaptable to the needs of these people. Just recently, in a couple of my cases, I've found that there's been barristers and solicitors on the other side that have said that they're finding it difficult, say, to get their client on Zoom. And so I think as a profession as a whole, you're just going to need to be more adaptable and just be flexible and try and work with people. So thanks very much for listening, and I would just echo what the rest of the panel said, that you know, if you're interested in getting involved in pro bono, definitely give the people at PILS a shout, and they'll let you know how to go about it. And also, if you've finished your degree and maybe you're at a crossroads and you're not sure about which direction to go next, I would definitely recommend the Access to Justice Masters in University of Ulster. It's a really great way to get involved in pro bono work, and you're helping out people in need, and you'll definitely develop your legal skill set. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Freddie, and thank you to all of our panelists. They have given us an awful lot to think about. We have big themes around skills development, networking, improving the image of the profession, perhaps making a very positive impact on people's lives. Now, we've eaten a wee bit into our Q&A session, but actually, as I said, there was so much to hear from our panelists and think about. So it's actually now over to you, our audience, who we can't see, for questions. And I think, Jennifer, you may have some questions for us that have come through from our audience. Am I right?
Yes, now I've quite a few have come through on the chat box function, so we're going to just try this afternoon to see if some of our audience can actually use their microphones. So I'm going to go to Owen Williamson, I think, who has self-muted. So I have tried to unmute you there. Owen, would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question? Owen? No. No. Well, listen, I think we've enough through the chat box anyway, so I'll maybe proceed with that. And first question I will go through. So somebody has asked your own personal pro bono highlights from your career so far.
Jennifer, I'm not sure if people can hear you clearly. I'm not hearing you very clearly.
Are you not? No. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because I tried to share that mic. Apologies about this, folks. What we'll do is, if you can hear me, no, I'm hearing a wee bit of it. Can I get all the other panelists to mute their mics just for the moment? Great, and then I'll go through the first question. So, how do you mix working normally, as can be in a pandemic, with the pro bono work? Sorry, you need to unmute now, Sinead.
Our panel like to take that question?
I can maybe offer a little bit of help with that one. Even with outside of the context of COVID-19, and arguably because we're all working from home and doing a lot of court via Zoom, or SiteLink it's called at the minute, we're doing a lot of talking to court like I'm talking to you now. Even before, arguably the current situation, you're able to manage your time a bit better because you're working from your one desk and linking in via video, whether it be to a consultation or to a court. But even prior to that, when you would have had, and I certainly would on a day-to-day basis in normal life prior to COVID, would have a big family law caseload, and those sorts of cases can require significant consultation time, significant time at court. And there were concerns, and there are always concerns about managing your time with regards to pro bono work. But I have to say that the team at PILS are very mindful of the need, obviously, for practitioners to earn a living and balance out their work with work that's going to be remunerated against work that is pro bono. And you can always have a very upfront and frank discussion about what you're able to manage, but it just boils down to a practice management issue for each individual as to what you can manage in your own time frame. And you're not going to be penalised if you turn around and say, listen, I'm very sorry, that case that's going to run for 3 weeks straight, I can't manage it right now with all the other cases that I have listed. So I don't know if that's everyone else's experience.
Thank you. Anybody else on the panel like to add anything there? Maybe I could maybe just add something there. I'm not sure the chair's supposed to do that, but I'm going to add something anyway. From my own experience, one of the things that I have come across in terms of people engaging in pro bono is that they are worried, and understandably worried, that they are going to get sucked into some major resource-intensive exercise at a cost to the rest of the practice, because we fully recognise, that people have to earn a living. But people can do pro bono work in different ways, and maybe somebody from PILS would maybe like to add to that. people can get involved in parts of the case, issuing or producing opinions on merits only. That's the only commitment they make. They can circumscribe, and I think you've touched on that, Jenny, the limits of what they can offer. And as long as people are quite upfront about that, there's no reason why we can't go for, why you can't get involved in pro bono work, small, discrete pieces of pro bono work, which frankly would make a very big difference. Very little contributions make very significant differences in people's lives. So I don't know.
Yeah. Sinead, maybe I'll just maybe I'm going to talk a little bit about it at the end, but can people hear me? I'm hearing like a little bit of a buzz. Okay. So yes, Sinead, you're right. Whenever somebody signs up, a legal professional signs up to our register, we have a whole range of spectrum that a potential person who's signing on can say at the outset. Look, I'd only be interested maybe in an initial conversation with an NGO, providing them with a steer, or they might commit to doing a legal opinion, or they might say, I'm actually interested in providing training to an NGO or to a member. Or they might say, look, I'm actually prepared to possibly do representation, maybe representation under a senior. Even what I will say is we ask you that at the outset. But even if you've committed to the whole range, everybody's practice is fluid. So, for example, we might approach you when a piece of work comes in, and if you don't have the time or the capacity, you can feel free to say no to that. And maybe offer a small part. So as both Jenny and Sinead have said, and coming from a practice background myself, we know that it needs to be managed very, very carefully. So we ensure that we do that for you. But so yeah, we try and take some of that fear away. I'll mention the pro bono register again at the end, but we do understand that fear.
Yeah. Maybe I have to get another question, Jennifer.
Apologies. I think we have Owen actually ready to ask the question. Owen, are you able to try your mic again, please?
Okay.
Yes,
Owen.
hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, Owen.
Brilliant. Thank you all to the panel for it's been a very informative session. I'm coming from a background as a young solicitor. I'm chair of the Northern Ireland Young Solicitors Association. I suppose following on really from what has just been mentioned there, as young solicitors, we are essentially employees of firms, and getting the time out to, certainly during firm time, to do pro bono work is a real issue, especially if you don't have that partner or director engagement with pro bono work. So I suppose, is there any form of promotional material which we might be able to pass on to more senior solicitors within firms that might bring them round to seeing pro bono work as the positive work that it is?
Anybody have? Yes. Okay, Nicholas, thank you.
I may take that one. The Bar of NI pro bono unit doesn't and hasn't been publicising its work so much over the last number of months and years, but there will be something coming hopefully from the Bar of NI's pro bono unit soon, to highlight our unit and the benefits of solicitors in Northern Ireland engaging in pro bono work. I do recognise the problem that solicitors on their own, employees of firms, might not be able to go out and engage in pro bono work and use firms' resources in order to do that. So where then can you bring to your partner, or I suppose your firm, and say, well, what are the benefits to our firm of doing pro bono work? And one of the big answer to that is that it gives you great publicity. There are a lot of big firms in Northern Ireland that do pro bono work and have minimum hours for their solicitors to do. I'm thinking particularly of, I think, A&L Goodbody. I think they do 20 hours a year for each lawyer. And the publicity that they can bring to the wider public of saying, we are a firm, hashtag we do pro bono work, I think that is a big benefit to solicitors and to the firm in general.
Can I just maybe add just to what Nicholas has said there? Oh, and that's a really good question. Just to say that there are solicitors on our register at the moment. If you want something purely tangible that you can print off, Emma, who's on our call, she actually did. PILS celebrated its 10th birthday last year, as Jenny had mentioned. And we did, I had nothing to do with it, so I'm saying we, but we did an impact report of our top 10 cases. And it shows really from, it's like a little story of each of the 10 cases, and it showcases the involvement and the impact that it has. So if you want something just very tangible, it's available on our website. Also, we do blogs and updates. And I mean, if you want to get in contact with us after this, if we can put something together, some kind of promotional material for you to share. Nicholas mentioned as well, we have a number of solicitor firms on our pro bono register as well, some of the bigger firms, Arthur Cox and NL Goodbody and Baker McKenzie, who as a firm give their time. So there's a bit of buy-in there as a firm, and it's about the culture of your firm really. But we can put something together for you if you need that in the immediate anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the big thing for us, is really about showcasing the impact. And as Sinead actually has already alluded to, it doesn't necessarily always have to be very big, heavy, time-consuming pieces of pro bono work that actually end up having a huge impact in people's lives. So it's lovely to be able to track that through and show that even if a number of people, it doesn't have to all be on one person's shoulders, because as Hester mentioned, it takes a lot of courage to get involved in pro bono work. The work can be, depending on the nature of the issue, it can be very heavy, it can take a lot, and when we're talking about mental health, it's something to be aware of, but it just shows that people can work together, the load can be shared, and ultimately that all can add up to something much greater than the sum of its parts. But we can follow up with you and anybody else actually that's interested in getting a copy of the impact report, and you can follow up with us afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Thanks everybody for the responses there. I think I just have to say I am the person supposed to be managing time, and I don't really know why I was invited to do this. I'm really never very good. That's not my reputation, actually. But I think we've clearly just opened a conversation, and we're sort of out of time for questions for the minute, though there are many more questions. So I think there is room for huge contacts between the Young Bar Association and the Northern Ireland Young Solicitors Association to flesh out many more issues, because as I said, this sounds to me like just the start of a very productive conversation. I think some of those 62% of people may not have, moved forward to do pro bono work because they're just not quite sure what or how or what it involves. But what I'm going to do at this point is actually hand back. I think I'm handing back to, is it Jennifer?
Yes, I think we're going to do a quick closing poll, if that's okay with everybody. So I'm going to launch a wee poll here for everybody to vote on, please. So based on what you've heard today, would you like more information on how to get involved in pro bono work? And I'm going to manage that. And close the poll and share the results. So we have 73% have said yes, definitely, and 27% have said maybe. I still have some questions, so that's a good result in the poll. And I think, are we handing over to Sarah to do a bit of a close on behalf of the PILS?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm really relieved, and maybe the panelists are as well, that nobody has said no thanks. So maybe we've done our job. I found it really interesting just to listen to how everybody, there's a wide variety of experience, and how everybody has made their way to come across pro bono work and to actively be involved. Very much from even, Dr. McGuinness, how she started off in a different profession. So it's really interesting to hear how people can arrive at the same door. I just want to explain very, very quickly about the Pro Bono register that has been alluded to or mentioned a couple of times during the webinar. So the Pro Bono register is just one of the services that PILS that we offer. And really, it's very basic. It is a list that we keep of legal professionals who have agreed in advance to potentially dedicate some time to offering our members who are NGOs, and they can be big NGOs or small community groups, or solicitors, that they have offered to give their time on a pro bono basis. And that can be an initial they can agree to provide initial conversation to an NGO who has an issue, a human rights or equality issue, or they can be involved right the way up to representation. The impact report that I mentioned there a couple of minutes ago, it's actually a good way to illustrate how each of those stories the Pro Bono register was involved. So you can see how the counsel or how the solicitor has assisted a member. So if you're thinking about making contact with ourselves, have a read over the impact report and see if it's something that you'd maybe want a little bit more information on or a chat about. I want to touch very quickly on COVID, because this is the environment that we're dealing with. And Nicholas had mentioned that he attended the launch event of Pro Bono Week on Monday, and myself and my colleagues were there as well. And something that was mentioned about how in COVID, how we're all feeling, a lot of us are feeling disconnected, and really not to underestimate how Pro Bono can actually make you feel connected and give a feel-good factor. So as well as the experience that you're going to get, the fact that you're helping out an NGO, it's that kind of feel-good factor, and the fact that we're connecting and offering somebody assistance, it can't be underestimated. So if you want to find out a little bit more, I think, Emma, do we have our addresses? Oh, we do. We have the information address there. If you want to even send an information or send an email to the info@ address to ourselves, have another conversation, we can set up a Zoom call. We're more than happy to facilitate and have a chat.
Okay, that's great, Sarah. Thank you. And that, I think, is we're in a minute. We have a minute to go. I wonder, is there any possibility there's a time for one quick question, or is that no? Are we about to get? It's actually Jennifer flying this plane. She's in mission control at the law centre. So what Jennifer says goes. I was aware I cut question time short very quickly, but it may be we haven't got time and the conversation's moving.
One more quick question, just as somebody did ask, what advice would you give to newly qualified solicitors or barristers in the audience today? So I think we've sort of covered that, but if somebody wants to make one final last point, and then we'll conclude this afternoon.
I was just going to respond very quickly and say with a bit of a plug, so it's a bit of a false answer really, but if anybody has got, my advice would be to reach out to any of the people who are involved today, reach out to ourselves at PILS, reach out, like we're all here today because we want more people to be involved. We want to tell you exactly the reality of what Pro Bono is like. And in a way, this sets me up very nicely because next week PILS are actually going to run another online webinar where we hope to bust some of the myths. So some of the things that we've talked about today, this idea that maybe it's only certain areas of law that you can get involved in pro bono work, maybe it's always long, big, complicated cases. We're going to sort of try and blow as many of those myths out of the water as we can next week. So I would say reach out and talk to people who've done it before so you can see what it's really like. Sign up to our event next week. We'll be advertising that. It's going to be on the 12th of November. It's next Thursday if you're free. And I'll shut up now and stop promoting.
That's excellent. Thank you, Emma, for that. This is the start of a conversation, only the start of a conversation. There are lots of ways to continue it. So I wish everybody luck in getting involved in that conversation, including the 62% of people who still have to dip their toe in the water. So look, thank you to everybody, to our panelists, to the Law Society, to the PILS project, to Captain Ferguson there, Mission Control, for keeping us all. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
And just if I could remind everybody there'll be an evaluation form sent out after the event, so I would just really encourage you all to complete that, please. And just on behalf of the PILS Project, Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission and the Law Society, can I thank sincerely Sinead for agreeing to chair this, and all our panellists this afternoon. You've really brought a great slant on things to the people in the audience in regard to pro bono, and we are very grateful, and hopefully this isn't the end of these conversations. And just lastly, can I all conclude by thanking you all in the audience for attending, and have a very good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.